Nemo is ridiculously wimpy and pathetic, has no motion, and no bitches. The only way he can bag a girl is through some plot device that turns him into a Super Saiyan to save her. Now that he's equipped with such immense power, the girl he saved takes him to Grand Seed Academy where he BS's his way into joining the strongest heroes in the world. In a village that looks worse than Florida, President Furia arrives looking for survivors but realizes she's too late when she finds the entire place turned upside down. As tears run down her cheeks, she sings a song to pay her respects to the ones who lost their lives. As the sun rises on the ruins, Furia's assistant, Ellen, arrives revealing she was unable to find any successors. Disappointed, Furia says that the funeral is complete and decides to head to the next destination. Meanwhile, the village of Uli is under attack when Ellen notices it from her train cabin. When she worries about the new students, Furia promises to save them. A young boy is running through the streets to save himself while giant monsters are eating the villagers. The boy hides in an alley and notices that the people who are devoured by the monsters become one of them, which increases their numbers. When all of the ways are blocked, he decides to head to the station, where he waits for a train. However, one of the monsters breaks inside, and the boy is soon surrounded by dozens of monsters. Just then, he hears a train heading his way. Ella notices the boy alive from inside the train and informs Furia, who tells someone on comms that it is a battle for the 7 Knights. Furia then jumps into action and heroically takes out several monsters using lightning magic. When the monsters keep coming, she summons Knight Pneumonia, using a card that grants him a trident. Using the weapon, she makes quick work of the monsters while the boy watches in awe. After finishing them off, Furia recognizes the boy as Nemo, a new student at Grand Seed Academy. Later, Furia serves Nemo coffee inside the train, and Nemo asks her if she's okay, prompting her to reveal that minor injuries are part of her job. When he asks why she risked her own life to protect him, she answers that she failed to save the village and was glad she was able to protect him. As Nemo processes the attack on his village, Furia reveals that 4 other towns were also swallowed by darkness. She tells him about her hero Pneumonia, who saved the world during the Great Dark Age. She tells him about the evil god Nestra, who once drove the world to the brink of ruin. Some heroes were chosen by the goddess to save the world, and the people who inherit the power of those heroes are called Successors. These are the students at the Grand Seed Academy, who have the duty of protecting the world against Thesis, the worshippers of Nestra. Furia tells him he'll be part of the team starting tomorrow, but Nemo says he isn't sure and only joined because someone told him he has talent. She assures him that everyone feels this way when they first join, and says that he might become the strongest of them all. Just then, the train is hit by a giant monster that knocks it off track. Nemo wakes up to find an unconscious Furia who wakes up in his arms and is in no condition to fight. As the monster attacks her, she uses her weapon to deflect its attack and reveals herself to be the leader of the 7 Knights. Despite being injured, she slices the monster in half, which amazes Nemo. However, the monster grows larger after reattaching its body, and Furia begins struggling against it. She uses her magic to summon a magic barrier and asks Nemo to run away with Ellen. Despite Nemo protesting against it, she insists on meeting her end while protecting others. Luckily, a card pops out in front of Nemo, and when he grabs it, his consciousness is teleported to a majestic palace. A voice asks who he is, and after he introduces himself, he begs her to send him back so he can help Furia. The voice introduces herself as the goddess Saras, the newest deity and the guardian of the garden. She asks him what his heart desires, and he reveals that he wants enough power to save Furia. Saras asks for something in return, and Nemo selflessly offers his life in exchange for Furia's safety. Seeing how pure his intentions are, Saras grants him the power he seeks, and Nemo is guided by a scar-faced man on how to use his powers. He returns to save her just as Furia's shield breaks, who is surprised, as she has never seen a succession like this before. Even Pneumonia's spirit tells her that Nemo is trustworthy and will turn out to be a fine hero. Nemo then springs into action and surprises Furia, who says he has such incredible power despite an incomplete succession. With his grappling rope, he does his best Levi Ackerman impression and helps Furia retain her weapon. Furia advises him to sync himself with his hero and tells him not to use them as tools. Nemo calls to this hero, and the two sync up to help Furia take down the giant monster. Later, as the sun rises, Furia thanks Nemo for saving her life, and the two shake hands as a symbol of camaraderie. The next day, Nemo arrives at the Grand Seed Academy, and is shocked to see the sheer scale of the place. He is joined by Furia and Ellen, who decide to give him a tour. Ellen leaves to handle the paperwork, while Nemo wonders if they are in trouble for destroying the train. However, Furia says it was a small price to save a human life, which is more valuable than anything in this world. Just then, one of her friends arrives with a fistless dragon, frozen in a cart, claiming he caught it in the Midlands. Furia then introduces him as Joe, the successor of the hero named Spike. Joe claims that because of Spike, he's the strongest of the 7 knights. Nemo finds his methods a bit cruel, given how the dragon is also a living being. However, Joe argues that it serves Thesis and has killed hundreds of people. Nemo reluctantly backs off, and Joe proceeds to the alchemy research facility to hand in his catch. After he leaves, Furia tells Nemo that Joe is a member of the 7 Knights, piquing his curiosity. Later, an emergency meeting is held between the 7 Knights, which includes Gareth, Shirley, Joe, and Gildan, as they discuss why they were summoned. Furia and Ellen arrive with Nemo, and Furia introduces him as the latest addition to the group. Shirley and Joe protest, claiming Nemo has no battle experience, but Furia says he was able to contract with the hero in the first ever battle, much to everyone's surprise. They refuse to believe Furia, and Gareth asks Nemo which hero he formed a contract with. Nemo says he only heard his voice and doesn't know who he is. Furia then tells him that Lady Eudaimonia told her to have faith in him, prompting them to reluctantly accept Nemo in their group. Furia says Joe is popular around the place, and tasks him with being a guide for Nemo. Later, Nemo apologizes to Joe since he's stuck with a nobody like him. But Joe grabs his collar and reminds him to cut the crap as he's now a part of their group. He shows him the statue of the original 7 Knights, and tells him to become worthy of inheriting their powers. Joe says he's proud to be a successor and will gladly give his life away to defend the world from Thesis. However, Nemo questions his morals, asking who will protect the world if Joe ends up dead. Just as he's about to receive a beating, a purple-haired woman named Sophitia arrives and introduces herself as the librarian. She explains that the students undergo tough training before they are able to form a contract with their heroes. Once completed, they are able to fuse their bodies to help them in combat. However, some are guided to their hero cards by fate, just like Nemo, who can be a beacon of hope for others. She then praises Joe for bringing a frozen dragon sample and leaves, causing him to temporarily drop his Andrew Tate act. After a fun tour of the academy, Joe shows him the dorm and calls him a weirdo for being so down to earth. After he leaves, Nemo heads inside, only to be welcomed by Furia. Later, a restless Joe is confronted by Spike, who asks him if he's jealous of Nemo. However, Joe says he only wants to get stronger and continues his late night jog. Meanwhile, Nemo feels awkward about being alone with Furia and Ellen. Nemo worries about receiving special treatment, so Furia tells him she has high hopes for him. She says that the successors who make contracts outside of the library are special, and that he will surely find a way to contribute. Later in class, the teacher tells the students about the 7 Knights who were once in conflict but later came together to change the fate of the world. When Nestor tried to cast darkness, these heroes rose up to keep the world safe. After class, Nemo greets Gareth in the hall, who asks him to take a vial to the Alchemy Research Institute. When Nemo happily agrees, Gareth wonders if he's really this good or just pretending. As the dragon Joe brought awakes from its frozen state, the receptionist Claire thanks him for bringing elf medicine and expresses her obsession with Garrett. Hearing her ramble, Joe walks down and asks her to keep it quiet. Just then, they hear rumbling outside and rush to see that the dragon has escaped the warehouse. When they notice Sophitia nearby, Joe calls his hero and temporarily freezes the dragon. He then asks Nemo to take everyone to safety while he takes care of the enemy. However, the dragon continues to heal its wounds and becomes stronger than before, to the point that even Joe can't take it on his own. Nemo arrives and asks him to get out of there, but he argues that he has to protect others even if it costs him his life. He then asks Nemo to contribute to their fight, so Nemo taps into his hero form and strangles the dragon using the rope from his grappling hook. When he struggles to hold down the dragon, Joe helps by freezing it, but it keeps breaking free. And this is when Nemo's hero appears and tells him how beings tainted with Thesis keep moving even after perishing. Joe then notices the dragon's core, which allows it to regenerate. He smashes the core into pieces, causing the dragon to finally give up. After the fight is over, Joe tells Nemo how his father was Successor who died protecting him. He wishes to be like his father, and seeing how strong Nemo really is, he asks him to be friends with him, so they can both go stronger together. Meanwhile, Sophatia sees this from afar and comments that Nemo might save them all. Later, Shirley briefs Furia on the report from the Alchemy Institute, and they consider no loss of life as a victory. Shirley then mentions how Nemo is weak and stupid, and that he should go through training. However, Furia says she is afraid of Nemo's power, and that she is tasked with monitoring him, just in case he loses control. After Shirley leaves, Furia tells Unamonia that she wants to trust Nemo. Sometime later, Furia holds a meeting and they discuss how the Thesis has become more dangerous recently. They have already attacked 3 cities and wiped them all. Thesis were defeated in the Battle of Berga Volcano, but they have regrouped to mount a massive counterattack. Furia is hopeful since they have a larger army here at the Academy and have acquired funds from various countries. With the determination to defeat the enemies, Furia dismisses the meeting and reveals that she made home-cooked meals for everyone. While Nemo is excited, the rest of them find it quite annoying. Later, as she serves them croquets, the knights discuss how this is the only thing Furia knows how to make. Nemo finds them quite tasty, and the rest of the knights wonder how he is munching on those so effortlessly. Later, he is exhausted from eating so much and reveals he can eat croquets every day. As they praise Nemo for his heroics, Joe tells Gildan to get on the ball or Nemo will overtake him. After they leave, Nemo stumbles across Sophatia and praises him for doing well. He says he doesn't feel confident, but she tells him even the teachers are talking about him. She says Nemo and his friends will save the world one day, and shows confidence in Nemo before leaving. Meanwhile, Gildan starts worrying about being left behind despite Joe claiming he was only joking. As Joe leaves, Gildan pulls a picture of his siblings and promises to work hard for them. Later, Nemo finds himself in the burning Grand Seed Library and asks his hero what he's trying to tell him. Before he gets an answer, he wakes up from his dream, and Furia shows up at his door asking him to dress up for action. The knights then board a flying ship where Furia gives them details about their mission. They have been summoned to take care of some Thesis monsters, and given that all 7 of them were summoned, that means the threat is too great even for the Academy elites. Meanwhile, at the Earthbald Island, the monsters destroy a silver hourglass and attack their commander. However, Furia and the knights arrive just in time to save her life. The captain briefs them on the situation, revealing that they have many injured inside the building. The knights get to work, each demonstrating their powers and destroying a large number of monsters. Gildan is determined to prove himself and overworks, which almost costs him his life. Joe and Nemo arrive to rescue him, and as Joe tells him to sit out, Nemo and him easily take down the monster Gildan was struggling against. As Furia eliminates the rest of the monsters, the people celebrate while Gildan feels left out for failing at his mission. Later, Sophatia heals Gildan's injuries and notices him acting strangely. However, he quickly snaps back to reality and claims he has to leave for training. He trains through the night, while Joe regrets joking with Gildan. Joe says Gildan is the prince of a whole country, which puts a lot of eyes on him. This is why he's desperate to become strong. Joe says that the only reason he told him to sit out of the fight was that Gildan would have run out of magic midway. Nemo advises him to say this to Gildan, but just then, they hear rumbling in the forest. Meanwhile, Furia gives mission details to the chairman, who worries about the broken hourglass. Furia says Thesis has destroyed them in other attacks too, and the chairman decides to investigate on the matter. Before he dismisses her, he asks her to be Nemo's very own Sherlock Holmes. In the hall, Furia and Ellen are discussing their day when Shirley arrives in a rush and informs them about Gilda's situation. Meanwhile, the rest of them are fighting a berserk Gildan in the forest, who has somehow turned into a monster. Gareth explains that drawing out power that one can't handle makes the magic run wild, which takes over the hero's mind. When Nemo asks how to help Gildan, Joe steps up to put him out of his misery. Nemo protests that they can't just throw his life away, and Joe says he has no other choice. Meanwhile, Gildan is in a vision where he sees himself getting praise from his people for being accepted into the Grand Seed Academy. He then sees a reflection of himself, who tells him he's just trying to run away from reality. Meanwhile, on the outside, Joe tries to freeze Gildan, but to no avail. the group leans towards the fact that it might be impossible to free Gildan, who himself tells them to end him before he loses control. Nemo refuses to let a friend perish, and Gildan's hero Jive tells him not to throw his life away after all that hard work he's put in to be here. With a newfound appreciation for life, Gildan asks the knights to remove his body from this monster, and they all work in sync to rescue their friend. As the girls arrive, Gildan is pulled out and thanks Nemo for saving his life. Joe tells Gildan that he didn't mean to make him feel like a burden, who brushes it off saying they're good friends. Later in the dorm, Nemo wakes up and is startled to find someone awfully close to him. That someone is Furia, who trips and falls right on top of Nemo, leading to an awkward situation. Later, she apologizes for scaring him and reveals that she was wiping his brow since Nemo was in bed all day after using too much magic earlier. He then recalls yesterday's events and asks how Gildan is doing. Furia says he's doing well and that he woke up before Nemo did. She scolds Nemo for pushing himself too hard and advises him to take care of himself. When Nemo decides to get up from bed, Furia says he needs more rest and pushes him back into it. As he's tucked into the blanket, Furia takes on the role of the searching nurse until he's back on his feet. Meanwhile, Gildan complains about his courteous care because he's accompanied by Joe and Gareth. He says he's jealous of Nemo being in Furia's care, but Gareth brushes it off and asks him if he remembers anything before he was turned into a monster. When Gildan says it happened in an instant, Gareth says it's strange for a man of Gildan's caliber and believes it was caused by an outside influence. He also recalls how the dragon Joe brought came to life so quickly and suspects a fetus within academy walls. Just then, the group hears Furia panicking in the kitchen, who has burned the pot of pores that she was making for Nemo. Not knowing what to do, she ends up making croquets. Again. When Nemo notices the bandages on her hand, he tells her he likes her croquets, which lightens her mood. Suddenly, a cat shows up in his room and starts playing with Furia. She then reveals that it is her pet who came looking for her. As she plays with the cat, she asks Nemo to pet it. However, the cat growls at him and runs off, leading him to believe that it is afraid of him. For the entire day, Furia tries her best to take care of Nemo and rests at his bedside when she's exhausted. However, Ellen arrives and reminds her of her duties, including the debriefing on the silver hourglass situation. Furia tells Nemo not to move an inch until she's back, but almost trips from exhaustion when she's about to leave. Ellen realizes that how Furia hasn't been sleeping well, and tells her to let someone else do the job. Furia insists on handling it herself and exits the room, leaving Nemo in Ellen's care. Ellen pours him tea, and the two talk about Furia. Ellen reveals Furia is the predecessor of the legendary Pneumonia, which is why she's been trained as her successor since childhood. Given she has so much on her plate, Nemo wonders why Furia spent the whole day caring for him. Ellen reveals it is because he was the sole survivor of his town, and Furia regrets arriving late. Nemo recalls how grateful Furia was for being able to save just one person, and Ellen adds that she feels great responsibility for him, which makes him wonder if he's another burden for Furia to carry. Later, Furia arrives in Nemo's room with Joe, Gareth, and Gildan to check up on him. Gildan jokes about Nemo becoming Furia's pet, and Joe expresses disappointment for his savior becoming a simp. However, when Sophatia enters the room, he starts acting like a dog on a leash. Meanwhile, Gareth prepares a concoction for Nemo which helps speed up the healing process. Sophatia wishes him a speedy recovery and leaves, prompting Gildan to tease Joe. Later, they all spend some time having fun and playing cards, when Gildan loses to Nemo. He says he'll ask his hero Jive for help, and Joe joins in stating he'll be the champion of cards with Spike's help. However, when Nemo reveals he can't talk to his hero, the group is shocked. Nemo reveals only his hero is able to talk to him, but since he drew so much power, they all assume Nemo was talking to him as well. When Nemo says he doesn't even know his hero's name, Gareth then suspects an abnormality. Joe says Sophatia is well informed on such matters, and Nemo considers talking to her about this issue. Just then, the head of the disciplinary committee, aka Shirley, arrives and scolds the knights for goofing around past bedtime. She also tells Furia not to involve herself in such activities since she already has so much on her plate. She also advises her to save energy because of the grave situation they are in. After she leaves, the mood shifts in the room and Furia apologizes to the group since it was her idea to begin with. Shirley had overheard their conversation and finds it quite strange that Nemo can't talk to his hero. However, she says it's okay as she's hiding some things of her own. As she visits Ellen's room to do some shady business, Furia and Nemo walk in the hallway, with Furia saying she's glad to see Nemo back in health. She notices Nemo is a bit off, but is distracted when she notices her cat running around. She reveals they're not allowed to have pets and will be in trouble if Shirley finds out. Just then, Shirley and her assistant Mina walk upstairs and the cat barely dodges their eyesight. When she notices them acting strangely, Mina assumes they're hooking up, but Shirley smells something fishy. Outside, the cat is resting on a tree while the two of them try to catch her. The evening turns to night, but the cat keeps dodging them. Eventually, the cat gets stuck on the roof and Nemo rushes to save it. However, in the process, he almost falls from the ledge, only to barely cling onto Furia's hand. Nemo tells Furia to let go or she'll fall too, but Furia is determined to save him. Nemo says he doesn't want to be a burden to her, but she claims she's only doing this because she wants to. She also says she can't let go because she wants to be his friend. Just then, both of them fall and Nemo's hero shows up, giving him the power to save both of them. As they sigh with relief, the cat has a change of heart and approaches them on its own. The next day, Furia stands by her window and sings the same song she sang to mourn the loss of the village. Last night, Unamonia told her that a storm was coming and that it would be the living who would have to face it. When Nemo wakes up, he visits the library and asks Sophatia about his hero. She asks what's up, and he explains that he can't talk to his hero. Sophatia then takes Nemo deep into the library, where they spend half a day looking for something to answer his question. However, Sophatia is unable to find anything in the books. When Nemo is disappointed, she tells him she will investigate as much as possible. As he leaves the library, he walks past Mina, who asks Sophatia about him. Later, Shirley and Mina are in the infirmary when Nemo and Furia arrive, as they discuss a member of the disciplinary committee being attacked in the academy. The only info they have is that the culprit is involved with feces. As Ellen finishes healing the guy, Furia uncovers bite marks on his neck and suspects a vampire. Shirley is frustrated and decides to investigate herself, but Mina and Furia advise her to rely on her subordinates. When Shirley says many committee members are being targeted, Nemo asks for permission to investigate as a member of the Seven Knights. Despite Shirley's objection, Furia allows Nemo to play Sherlock. Outside, Nemo is approached by Mina, who thanks him for helping out. She says many of their members are out of action and she herself had much on her plate, which is why she's really grateful for his help. As she leaves, Nemo visits Shirley, and while the two investigate, she comments that she never expected him to volunteer. Nemo says he wants to be more help to Furia, but Shirley suspects more, and asks him if he's hiding something. Nemo didn't have any knowledge of the Seven Knights and the Grand Seed Academy, which she finds strange. She says she doesn't care about Nemo's secret, and as long as he's working for the greater good, she's willing to trust him. Afterward, Nemo visits Claire and asks him for documentation on monsters. However, Claire says vampires fall under the human category since they aren't necessarily evil. She then lends him a book on vampires to help with the case. She asks if Gareth has mentioned her recently, and when Nemo says no, she starts thirsting over Gareth's cold attitude. Just then Mina arrives and the two decide to walk together. Mina is carrying medicine for the injured committee members and reveals that people suspect Shirley to be the culprit behind these attacks. The rumor stemmed from the fact that all of the injured worked with them just before they were attacked, but Mina refuses to believe it, especially since Shirley is the one working the most to catch the culprit. Nemo figures Mina loves Shirley and comforts her, promising to support her in any way possible. Hearing this, she asks Nemo to help investigate the forest on the outskirts of the campus. The forest is dark, and Nemo suggests they bring a light, but Mina says that will put them at the risk of getting spotted. When they enter deeper into the forest, they notice Shirley sucking on Ellen's blood. Nemo tries to interfere, but his hero tells him not to. As Shirley apologizes to Ellen and asks her if she's okay, Mina accidentally steps on a branch, which makes enough noise for them to realize someone is watching. Shirley sees the two of them spying on her and leaves with a touch of disappointment on her face. Nemo decides to go after her, and when Mina asks him to be careful, Nemo says she trusts Shirley. As Shirley is making a run for it, her hero Rachel advises her to embrace reality. Just then, Nemo arrives and asks her if she's a vampire. She replies an affirmation, and Nemo assumes she's the one who attacked the committee members. However, Shirley says she would never have stayed with them if she knew they would suspect her. She then turns into her humor form and tells Nemo to get out of her way. When Nemo refuses, she attacks and urges him to fight back. She says vampires are always feared by humans and recalls how her own family was destroyed despite never hurting a soul. Everywhere she went, she was persecuted because of her vampire background. Finally, she found some peace and acceptance at this school, which is now over too. She says that the word of her being a vampire will get out, and her friends will abandon her like before. However, Nemo argues that Ellen didn't abandon her, and neither would her other friends. However, he says he will keep this secret to himself, so Shirley doesn't have to leave. When she asks why he would do this for her, Nemo says it's because he wants the team to stick together, and she is an important part of their group. Afterward, Shirley asks if Mina would understand, and Nemo assures her that she will. Just then, they notice Ellen being dragged somewhere by feces monsters and decide to rescue her. However, they are surprised to learn that Mina was behind the other attacks. She reveals herself as a vampire and says she would have loved to play with her more if it wasn't for her orders. When Nemo asks what she's talking about, Mina reveals she has orders from feces. As Shirley realizes that the feces have infiltrated the academy, Mina orders them to attack Nemo. The two of them take down the monsters and ask Mina why she's doing this, only for her to reveal their purpose of creating a new world. She says no nation will be able to stand the feces without the power of the Seven Knights, and they will use Nestra's power to create a world where vampires can live freely. She tempts Shirley with the thought of a free world, but Shirley decides to stay with her team. Mina suggests turning them into vampires, but Shirley says she'll stay with them as they are. Mina decides to take her away by force and knocks both of them out. However, Nemo continues to be a thorn in her ass despite not wanting to hurt her, as she does her best to Lisa from Take an Impression and kicks Nemo's ass. Shirley gets back up and turns into her hero form to stop Mina. She uses fire to weaken Mina, as it is the only thing that vampires can't defend against. As Nemo gets back and receives encouragement from his hero, he asks Shirley to hold Mina in the place for a little longer. As Nemo distracts her, Shirley attacks from behind and grabs Mina, using her fire-based hero powers to nullify Mina's abilities. Just then, Nemo asks his hero to grant him power and decides to end Mina to protect the people who are important to him. He summons a weapon called Ledge's Breaker and uses it to shoot her right through her stomach, causing her to be Thanos snapped away. Back in the meeting room, Ellen is sound asleep while Shirley and Nemo discuss the battle with Mina. When Nemo says he wanted to save someone like Furious saved him, Shirley finds it amusing and says she knows he's hiding something. As she bites her neck, she says they both now have secrets to keep. After a few days, Gareth is looking into Mina's case and learns that she was investigating a rumor on campus, which was about a ghost in the old library. He visits Sophatia, who tells him that most of the records were lost in a fire and that the old librarian was a double agent for Thesis. And his name was Genius, and it was Furia's ancestor Eunomonia who defeated him. It is rumored that Genius's curse continues to haunt the academy. At night, Gareth leaves the academy, only to be greeted by Claire, who brings him records of the old library. She asks why he's looking into the library, but Gareth brushes it off and begins walking away. She asks if there's anything he needs help with, but Gareth tells her no and continues to walk on. The next day, Furia and Nemo are walking through the school grounds, and Furia tells them about the upcoming school festival. As they walk into the hall, they find the door stuck, only for Claire to open it using separation spells of alchemy. Later, as they take tea, Claire wishes she was better at attachment, making them realize how much she loves Gareth. Claire reveals that Gareth once saved her from a feces monster, and ever since that day, she has been obsessed with him. As Nemo wonders what love really means, Claire reveals she wants to invite Gareth to the dance. Furia explains that it is a nighttime tradition at the festival, which brings lots of couples together. However, Claire is heartbroken, as she knows Gareth won't come with her. Nemo advises her to go for it, as she might never get a chance like that again. After encouragement from both Furia and Nemo, Claire decides to ask Gareth for the dance. She then asks Furia if she's chosen a dance partner. Furia hesitantly looks at Nemo, but then quickly looks away. But Claire gets the hint and wishes her luck. Later, Nemo asks Joe who he would be dancing with. Before he can answer, Gilda swoops in and tells Nemo that Joe will be dancing with Sophatia. When Nemo asks if he's in love with Sophatia, Joe starts blushing. He asks Gildan about his dance partner, who pulls out a number of letters he received from several girls. Gildan asks Nemo about Furia, who puts on the clueless act despite the obvious signs. Just then Shirley arrives and asks Nemo if he's chosen a dance partner for the festival. When Nemo says no, she asks him to be her dance partner, shocking both Gildan and Joe. Joe says he's never seen Shirley act so girly, and Gildan asks if something went on between the two of them. However, Nemo decides to keep that neckbite a secret. Later, Furia gathers the knights to decide on the student council's event. When Furia asks if anyone has any ideas, Gildan says they should open a chic bar, which is ruled out by the committee. Joe says they should arrange a fighting tournament, but Gareth deems it all pointless and decides to walk away. Shirley says she would lead by example and let others relieve stress, and Gildan is shocked to see the head of discipline committee act so loosely. Gareth decides to leave the meeting, stating that he will help them in whatever they decide. After he leaves, Joe reveals Gareth's hometown was destroyed by Phases, which is why he can't rest until he makes sure the academy is safe. As the group continues to brainstorm ideas for the festival, Claire meets Gareth outside and tells him she wants to help with the investigation. She suggests searching the old Academy Institute records and begs Gareth to let her help. Gareth says he has nothing to repay her with, and Claire finally sums up the courage to ask him for the dance. Gareth agrees, and Claire is extremely happy to finally have a moment with her beloved. Later, the festival is underway with shops, theaters, and a cafe. Joe is disappointed that the cafe is all the council came up with, but Gildan tells him to quit whining and do his job. Despite some playful teasing, Nemo is happy to join his friends in something other than battling Phases. Furia asks Nemo if he will be her dance partner for the night, but Nemo reveals Shirley has already asked her. Shirley shows up just then and asks Nemo for an answer. Furia asks who he will choose, and when Nemo says he'll dance with both, the girl insists he has to choose one. When he's put in a tough spot, Gildan tells him to take an order, giving him a reason to escape. Nemo delivers croquets to Sophatia and asks her if admiring someone and wanting to be with them means love. She says love takes many forms, and Nemo says he observed people acting differently when they're in love. However, that hasn't happened to him, which is why he is confused as to what he feels. Sophatia says he's going through adolescence, which is normal for his age. She says love is the desire to help the one you love, but everyone expresses it in a different way. One person can be in love with many people, but with different orders of priority. Sophatia says the world would be better off if they didn't have to choose and could love everyone equally. Later, Nemo arrives at the cafe to find Gildan and Joe closing it up. Nemo learns that Furia went to the council room with Ellen to finish up some work. Joe says he heard about Nemo getting invitations from both Shirley and Furia, and Gildan asks who he will choose. After some time, Nemo visits Shirley, who asks him if he has the answer. Nemo tells her to ask Ellen instead of him. He says he noticed her looking at Ellen earlier and thinks that she might be in love with her. However, despite wanting to be with Ellen, Shirley says that he doesn't know how Ellen feels. She doesn't know if she loves Ellen, which is why she can't ask her. She says she only invited Nemo because she was frustrated, but as it turns out, she won't be dancing with anyone at all. Just then, Shirley leaves to help Gildan with the furniture. Meanwhile, Claire is waiting for Gareth at the old library ruins when she accidentally falls to the floor. She comes across a locked door and uses separation magic to open it. Despite not knowing what lies ahead, she enters the door to help Gareth with the investigation. Meanwhile, Nemo visits Shirley again, who tells him she won't be dancing with him. Nemo tells her that everyone expresses love differently, so it is okay if she's a little devious. Shirley says she can never understand how Ellen feels, since she never expresses herself, and the dance might be the perfect opportunity for her feelings to come to light. She thanks Nemo for opening up her mind, and asks if he will be dancing with Furia. Before she leaves, she says that Furia has no trace of deviousness in her, so Nemo better not break her heart. At the dance festival, Furia dances with Nemo while Shirley partners up with Ellen. As Gareth is still waiting for Claire, Nemo expresses that he's grateful for meeting them at all. Meanwhile, Claire ventures underground and finds a glowing book with a seal on it. As soon as she touches it, she starts screaming. Above ground, Gareth wonders if Claire will join him, and that's when she unexpectedly shows up completely fine. When he asks her where she has been, she says she isn't sure herself. She apologizes for being unable to find anything regarding their investigation, but Gareth tells him it's alright and asks of her for a dance. As they dance, Claire says it is a dream come true and this is the happiest she's ever been. Just then her body turns into crystal, and her body parts fall off, causing her demise. Later, a funeral is held for Claire, and people start talking about the curse of the old library that caused her demise. When people ask why Gareth isn't here, Shirley Sterling tells them to keep their mouths shut. Sophia performs the funeral, and they all pay their respects for their fallen friend. Nemo notices Gareth standing far away, and excuses himself to talk to him. When he approaches him, Gareth says Claire is gone because of him. Nemo asks if he loved Claire, and he says he doesn't know. He does know that she loved him, and regrets using her for the investigation. He promises to find her killer to honor her memory and walks off. Meanwhile, the board summons Furia and informs her about the Birgit volcano, which is the place where her ancestor Eudaimonia defeated Thesis. She learns that a massive underground facility has been discovered there, and the attacks that happened recently were all directed at the towns near the mountain. This proves that Birgit volcano is infused with magic, which is most likely caused by the broken silver hourglasses. After Thesis almost destroyed the world, Goddess Saraz was barely able to keep it in one piece, which is equivalent to a glass being shattered and mended again. The silver hourglasses are the things that hold the world together. Before Thesis can use the magic of hourglasses for their own ambition, Grand C must take action against them. Furia argues that they don't know the extent of the enemy's strength, but learns that Thesis' leader, Amos, resides inside the base. They say that they can't defeat Thesis without Furia and her knight's help, and given the recent events, they are sure that the enemy is hiding in their academy still. This is why they want to root them out before things go south. Outside, Ellen asks Furia if she's sure about this. She declares that the chairman's will is the will of light. However, Ellen sees right through her act, and Furia reveals she's worried about the whole thing as it could be the final battle that'll shape this world. She says they'll eventually have to fight that war, but she would prefer more time to prepare before they head out. Ellen, who already has a plan, whispers it in Furia's ear. Meanwhile, Gildan excitedly informs the rest about the board's decision, which hypes Joe up. As Nemo worries about Gareth's absence, Gildan asks him what kind of place the volcano is. Nemo, despite living close to it, strangely says he's never been there. Later, he visits Claire's grave, where Sophia shows up and finds it hard to accept her demise. Nemo says she doesn't know anything about her, but is sad that she's gone. Sophia says he's a kind young man, which is why his hero is helping him. With a smile on her face, she says Nemo will save them all one day. Meanwhile, Eudaimonia tells Furia that once this war is over, there is something she must bring to light, which is to reveal the truth of the old library. On the other hand, Gareth is investigating Genius, who was suspected to be a double agent. When the library was burned, Eudaimonia was the one who put an end to him, but she herself perished after some time due to the curse. As Gareth learns this is what caused Claire's demise, he decides to put an end to it. The next day, Nemo wakes up to hear Furia singing on the balcony. He approaches her to ask about the song, and Furia reveals Eudaimonia used to sing this song frequently. The two then discuss Eudaimonia's history and the current war, and Furia says she's filled with uncertainty. She then recalls her childhood, remembering that she was raised to save the world. She didn't know if it was by her own choice or only because her father wanted her to. Despite that, she saved Nemo and the cat, and everyone else, meaning she's actually a hero. Later, the group heads to the volcano to face the biggest mission of their lives. Inside the ship, as Furia was debriefing the rest on the mission, Nemo was distracted by Gareth's empty seat. Nearing the mountain, they fire the flares, giving Joe and Gildan the signal to march with their troops. The rest of them jump from the ship and tap into their hero powers. Breaking into the lab, they clear Thesis monsters, and Furia asks Ellen to stay behind and help Joe and Gildan. She, Shirley, and Nemo venture deeper and to face more monsters. As they continue pushing forward, Amos is keeping an eye on them. They eventually arrive at a factory and find a broken capsule, only to be attacked by a pink-haired Successor. She is joined by two of her partners, who are also Successors. They reveal that they were chosen by Nestra to create a new world, and a girl among them introduces herself as Rada, the successor of Irene. The three of the evil Successors attack the heroes and separate them, and the guy fighting Shirley introduces himself as Volux, the successor of Mercury. The guy fighting Nemo is Castres, the successor of Delans. and the three of them overwhelm the heroes. Meanwhile, on the outside, Joe and Gildan face tough opposition. Inside, Rada mocks Furia for being weak. On the other hand, Castrus asks Nemo to face him head on, but Nemo thinks he's Naruto and asks if he values the lives of Rada and Volux. When he says he only values destruction, Nemo uses the distraction to evade him and attack Rada instead. He says he wants to save Rada and the two of them manage to overwhelm her momentarily. However, Castrus soon catches Nemo and attacks Rada for being weak. Surprisingly, Nemo blocks the attack, stating he doesn't want anyone to be hurt. Amos is watching this and asks nature to grant him power so he can reshape the world. The rising power is felt both outside and inside the lab, and as the heroes are overwhelmed, Garrett's investigation takes him to the old library. Opening the door Claire went through before she perished, Garrett notices the glowing book, followed by faceless monsters surrounding him. The evil trio uses the power of possession, which as they claim was granted to them by Amos. Furia and Shirley are shocked that they're still in control of their bodies, but Castrus says it's because they use their heroes like tools. When Furia argues that heroes are not mere tools, Volux laughs at the idea of feeling things for one's hero. The evil trio then attacks them, showing that they are much more powerful than the heroes had anticipated. Meanwhile, Gareth is surrounded by monsters and realizes that there is a Thesis base under the academy all this time. Promising to avenge Claire, he begins clearing them out one by one. Outside Amos HQ, all the monsters grow stronger, as even Gildan and Joe struggle to hold them back. As they worry about the destruction of more silver hourglasses, they wonder how the others are doing inside the lab. Amos is watching everything, and states that everything is going as prophesied. Underground, Nemo's getting his ass kicked by the possessed Volux, who declares himself superior to ordinary heroes. Castrus orders Rada to make herself useful, but Volux tells her to stay back, as she'll only get in his way. As she advises Volux to not get too cocky before he wins, the heroes launch a quick counterattack which ends up injuring Volux. He is quite frustrated, and launches a reckless attack that ends up hurting his own comrade. The heroes take advantage of the situation, realizing that the villains are not working together at all. On the surface, Gildan advises the troops to work together as a team, as he and Joe begin to turn the tides. Underground, Volux asks Rada for help, who refuses to interfere given how he told her to step back earlier. Just then, the three of them lose control of their possessions, and the heroes are broken free from the chains they were in. The three of them begin going through the same exact transformation that almost consumed Gildan, which confuses them, as Amos had told them they were safe. They recall how Amos taught them that heroes were merely tools, and Nemo steps up telling them that the heroes will talk to them if they're willing to listen. Rada tilts towards Nemo, but Castrus is still on his high horse and refuses to face reality. After Shirley makes pudding out of his body, Volux runs away in fear, while Rada questions her vampire background. Since Rada is still in control of her body, Shirley asks her to choose a side. Meanwhile, Gareth is fighting the monsters when Sophitia unexpectedly shows up and helps him get out. Back underground, Shirley is waiting for Rita's answer when Nima asks her and Furia to head to the temple and leave the rest to him. Before leaving, Furia says she'll never forgive him if he perishes, as they need him to stop Thesis once and for all. Once they're gone, Nemo tells Rita that they are like siblings, and she asks him why he betrayed them. She says he was the chosen one, and attacks him while asking why he cast that aside. Nemo says it's because he chose a different life for himself, but Rita argues that he didn't have a choice. Meanwhile, Furia and Shirley are on their way to Amos and worry about Nemo's safety. They wonder if Gildan and Joe were able to secure the ritual site, and decide that they'll just have to trust them for now. Rita and Nemo engage in a battle, with Rita complimenting Nemo's strength. Nemo says he's gotten stronger because of his friends, but Rita says friendship is an alien concept for artificial successors like her. She was taught to use her hero like a tool, and refuses to acknowledge her doubts, as they would mean denying everything she has been all her life. As she launches another attack on Nemo, and fails to summon her hero's power, Nemo continues his efforts to persuade her. Eventually, Nemo manages to strike her down, making her wonder if he'll finish her off. However, in that moment of life and death, her hero Irene calls to her, and grants her the power to transform. As she gets up, she questions what happened, and Nemo explains that it was her hero talking to her. He says if they try to listen, the heroes respond to their calls, which is why she was the only one who didn't lose control. Rita says she needs to find out why Amos created them, and why he's making them fight each other, and Nemo kindly lends her a helping hand. When she points out his kind nature, he says he's just a terrible liar. Meanwhile, Volux hurries to Amos and begs him for help, stating he does not want to die like this. However, Amos was told that only the sole survivor would be the true son of destruction, and that the three of them had failed him. As he looks at Nemo heading towards him with Rita, he says that the true son of destruction will arrive here soon. Amos then reveals that one can only resist possession for a short amount of time, and he now has no use for Volux in his current state. He sends Volux on a permanent vacation, the afterlife, declaring that artificial beings like him are worthless to him. As he receives another prophecy, Furia and Shirley arrive at his door to put an end to his plans. However, they are horrified to see Volux lying dead on the floor, as he claims they're mere sacrifices for the true son of destruction. Sophatia tells Garrett that Nemo is the one Amos was seeking all this time. Furia asks him why he's doing this, so he channels his inner American and says he wants to recreate a world without corruption. Of course, he will be the leader of this new world. As they engage in battle, Furia and Shirley's attacks seem to have no effect on him. When Shirley stabs him with her rapier, he casually pulls it out and kicks her ass, revealing that he acquired the power of time manipulation using the powers of the silver hourglasses. Several years ago, Ellen met a girl and told her that she would perish in an accident very soon. Sometime later, the girl passed away in an accident. Meeting Vanessa, the controller of time, gave her the power to see the future. As everyone she cared about slowly perished, each day was like following a script she couldn't change. Ellen can't see a future past a certain date, which she assumes is the end of the world. One day, she came across Furia, and just at first glance, she knew this girl would play an important role in the future. Furia and Ellen became friends, grew up together, and formed the Seven Knights, all while Ellen was preparing for Doomsday in secret. In her room, she discusses with Vanessa how strange it is for her to not know what the future holds, who advises her to be careful from here on out. Meanwhile, Shirley and Furia engage with Amos, who declares himself a true hero of the new era. As he hurls Furia away, Nemo arrives just in time and catches her. On the surface, Joel takes out the last remaining monster, and the troops head to the ritual site to secure it. This site is what Thesis was using to suck out the powers from the silver hourglasses, and it was Ellen who located the place. As Gildan jokingly comments how Ellen knows everything, Joe begins wondering why they weren't given the details of this mission. Gildan says it was classified, but Joe suspects something else might be cooking. Meanwhile, Amos is thrilled to finally have Nemo back and declares him the true son of destruction. Rita protests as she was told that she, Castrus, and Volux had that role, but Amos ignores her and asks Nemo why he didn't game Ender. Nemo says it's because he started seeing the truth. Rita asks if their lives have no meaning, and Amos says they were merely pawns to lure out the true son of destruction. She falls to her knees after learning the truth, but seeing a lifeless Volux fills her with rage. She powers up and attacks Amos, who takes the hit and throws her around. Shirley reveals that Amos appears to be invincible, giving none of their attacks have an effect on him. As Amos tells them to give up, Furia asks what he's planning to do with Nemo. Amos reveals that sacrificing Nemo will incite the coming of Nestra, the god of destruction, which will give him the power to reshape this world. Nemo says that won't make people happy, but Amos truly believes that it will. Despite Furia and Shirley's protest, Amos says that Nemo understands, since he has the curse of destroying the world in him. Meanwhile, Sophatia tells Garrett that the curse of the library is real, and shows him that she herself is affected by it. She reveals that the curse kills you if you learn about it, which is what caused Claire's demise. Despite the danger, Garrett demands to learn the truth about the library. He says it is the only way to honor Claire's memory, so she decides to tell him everything about Genius, the old librarian. On the other hand, Amos knocks out the three of them, and begins preparations for the prophecy to come true. He starts sucking out Nemo's magic to fuel the forthcoming Nestra. As Nemo suffers from having his life sucked out of him, Shirley lies disappointed, as she is powerless against Amos. However, before Amos succeeds, Ellen arrives to put an end to his plans. Amos says one hero can't harm him, but Ellen says she sees his defeat in the future. Furia asks him about the ritual site. and Ellen tells her that all the preparations are complete. Ellen uses her time powers to stop the time entirely, while the ritual site starts glowing up. Amos attacks her, but she stops his attacks mid-air using her powers. Appearing like the true final boss, Ellen destroys Amos's ring and uses the fragments to heal Nemo. After unfreezing time, Ellen reveals that Amos cannot regenerate anymore and collapses. Taking advantage of his vulnerable state, Nemo and Furia jump into action to defeat him. However, Amos proves to be quite the challenge even without the regeneration. The two parties engage in a fearsome battle, with Furia leading from the front while Nemo charges up his attack. Amos notices this and sends one of his attacks towards the defenseless Nemo. However, before the attack hits him, Rita deflects it from afar, giving Nemo enough time to launch his attack. As he strikes Amos, the Physis monsters around the mountain drop, while the rest witness this scene from outside. While the cursed book in the old library opens, Nemo and the rest celebrate their victory against Physis. As Furia notices familiar crystals in the walls, the temple begins collapsing, and Rita decides to leave on her own. Before heading out, she says Nemo has been chosen as the Son of Destruction, and there is no going back for him. The four of them then head outside where Joe and Gildan greet them happily. Furia declares that the mission is a success, prompting a celebration from the entire army. Back in the temple, Amos uses the remainder of his ring's power to heal himself. However, he's affected by the curse that ended Claire. Just then, a holographic image of Sophitia shows up, revealing herself to be a part of Physis all along. Turns out, she manipulated the events to give Ellen a false sense of security, so she could continue her plans without any interruptions. She says she used Amos as a pawn to lure out Nemo's powers, which will allow her to destroy the entire world without a trace. As Amos turns into a crystal and shatters, Rita overhears the entire conversation and wonders what to do next. The group heads back to Grand Seed, hoping for a relaxing day after winning this war. Shirley asks Ellen to explain how she knew so much, and she promises to explain it later. However, as soon as they enter the academy, they are surrounded by guards. Gareth shows up, revealing that Nemo is not a human, but a synthetic lifeform created by Physis. He says that the awakened dragon, Gildan's possession, and Claire's demise were all caused by Nemo. Nemo was put behind bars when Furia and Ellen visit him. Furia reveals that the librarian who once betrayed Grandseed is the very person whom Nemo has formed a contract with, while Ellen reveals that the curse freezes a person in time and locks their very existence. This is why Amos called him the Son of Destruction. Gareth arrives and blames Nemo for using the power of Physis to destroy Grandseed. In the Night HQ, the group is unusually silent when Gildan speaks in favor of Nemo, only for Gareth to point out the investigation conducted by Sophitia and the board. He says that the three artificial successors they met are similar to Nemo, who is accused of using Genius's powers to infiltrate the academy. As Shirley admits the similarity from the old school reports, Gildan argues that the curse existed before Nemo showed up. Gareth says that Eudaimonia had sealed it in the past, but Nemo used Genius to release it, which caused Claire's demise. Joe says he noticed weird things after Nemo arrived, such as the revival of the dead dragon, Gildan's possession, and Physis entering the academy. However, Gildan is still in favor of Nemo, claiming that he might have been set up by someone else. Furia agrees, which is why they have only confined him behind bars. Releasing him would cause panic among students, but Gareth desperately wants to learn that truth. Furia recalls Nemo's immense and unusual power, revealing that she kept him close to keep an eye on him. Joe says that Nemo is their friend, but if the accusations are true, he must side with the school. Gildan isn't too happy and declares that he will prove Nemo's innocent at all costs. Later, Gareth visits Nemo and warns him against using Genius, as the magic circle will prevent succession. He reveals that the dorm was built specifically to seal dangerous successors like Nemo, but Nemo says he has no intention of hurting anyone. Gareth uses a magic spell to reveal Nemo's corrupted arm, which he claims is a reflection of his sin. When Gareth asks what sin he's talking about, Furia hears them from afar and decides to overhear the conversation. Nemo reveals that he is an artificial successor created by Physis. He was born in that base along with many brothers and sisters, where he saw many of the failed experiments. In his capsule, Genius will talk to him and encourage him to live. which allowed him to make his way to Grand Seed. Nemo says he just wants to be with Furia and the rest, but Gareth refuses to believe him. Nemo says he would feel the same way if he were in his shoes, and asks Gareth to end him because he does not want to harm any of them. However, Gareth says he won't kill him until he's proven guilty and leaves. Meanwhile, Shirley asks Ellen what she thinks about the situation. When Ellen says Shirley doubted Nemo as well, she says the timing seemed way too convenient for everything. Before she speaks further, Ellen stops him as it will make her suspicious too, and offers her some of her juice. Shirley says Nemo saved her life, but Ellen tells her not to worry and let things pan out. Later, Joe meets Gildan outside the Student Affairs Committee, and Gildan says he will do everything in his power to prove Nemo innocent. Later, the two chat about how Gildan was terrified on his first deployment, and how Joe never thought he would have a prince among their ranks. They discuss Nemo's case, with Gildan speaking heavily in favor of him. Joe reminds him of all the pain Thesis has caused him, but Gildan tells him not to include Nemo in that group of monsters. When Joe comments on Nemo's arm, Gildan says his ears aren't human either, and they don't make him one with the Thesis. Joe says he knows Nemo's a good guy, but he has a feeling that he has been lying to them all this time. Meanwhile, Furia asks what happened to the old librarian from Pneumonia, who shows her that she's been affected by the same curse as Claire. She reveals that anyone who digs deeper is affected by the curse, and asks if Furia is willing to risk her life to save Nemo. Furia says she can't bear the thought of losing Nemo, so Pneumonia decides to take her to the one person who holds all the answers. She takes Furia to the underground library where the cursed book lies. As soon as she approaches the book, she is surrounded by a dark aura that comes from inside. Meanwhile, Gildan visits a board member and asks him to go easy on Nemo. When the board member hesitates, Gildan says he can use his wealth to make all his debt disappear. Hearing this, the man reluctantly agrees to help prove Nemo innocent. After he leaves the room, he notices Shirley, who overheard everything. Expecting a scolding, Gildan is delighted when Shirley decides to help him in the cause. Meanwhile, Joe is practicing in the forest when Sophatia approaches him and asks if he's in doubt. Joe says he doesn't know what to do, prompting Sophatia to take advantage of his vulnerable state. However, Joe snaps back to his Andrew Tate persona, promising to do what he can to protect her. As Nemo recalls the time when he first met Furia, Furia visits his hometown and finds a picture of a young Nemo with his parents. Looking at the ruins, she imagines how lively the town would have been if Thesis hadn't attacked. As she finds a locket stone that Nemo was wearing in the picture, she's attacked by Rita, who assumes Furia has been on her trail. Before Furia can explain herself, Rita attacks, prompting her to take defensive measures. The two engage in a battle of wits, with Furia knocking out Rita with her Purification Thunder. When Furia asks her to stop fighting, Rita says she would rather game in here than be executed by Grand Seed. She asks Irene to lend her power, and Irene acknowledges her resolve, granting her the ability of legitimate succession. Armed with this newfound power, she decides it's time for round 2 against Furia. Meanwhile, in court, Nemo states that he has no info on the enemy, and Gareth suggests executing him for hiding information and to contain the curse. Sophatia and Joe approve of this decision, and the chairman calls for Nemo's execution. However, Shirley and Gildan arrive with an imperial order from the mainland, which demands a stay of execution. Gareth is not too happy to see this, and Gildan asks the chairman to respect the Empire's decree. However, Sophatia says the order has arrived too late, and that Nemo should be executed at once. The Knights are about to remake Avengers Civil War, but Furia arrives with the evidence to prove Nemo innocent. She shows him the locket stone she found in his house, revealing that it belonged to the boy whose body he stole. Nemo admits to random PvPing a little boy and stealing his memories, and asks Furia to excuse him. However, as Furia wields her weapon, she reminds him that she promised to protect him. Following an explosion, Furia takes on Gareth, who asks him to reconsider her choices. As Furia's ships arrive, Joe decides to take matters into his own hands, only to be electrocuted. Furia escapes in her ship with Nemo, while Sophatia watches with a sinister smile on her face. On the ship, Nemo learns that Sophatia is the leader of Thesis and notices Rita on the ship, who decided to join forces with Furia after an intense duel. The girls then explain that Sophatia manipulated him into using Genius's power, which broke the seal on the old library. His weapon, the Legends Breaker, served as a trigger to activate the curse, so now he blames himself for Claire's passing. Just then, they hear a loud explosion and look behind to see a huge magical vortex coming out of the library. As the Academy officials assess the situation, they reveal that nearly 80% of the barrier was destroyed by the vortex. Even the astral space stability has dropped, and they have only 60 hours before the world they now know completely falls apart. Seeing that there is nothing he can do here, Gareth decides to go on a mission of finding Nemo. In the council room, Gildan and Shirley say they want to learn the truth and trust their friend, but seeing the world collapse because of Genius's power, Joe wants to put an end to Nemo. Despite protests, he says he wants to protect his family and has to stop playing the nice guy forever. On the other hand, Gareth visits Sophatia and asks her to grant him the power to end Nemo. Meanwhile on the ship, Rita falls asleep on guard duty while Furia and Nemo discuss their next move. Nemo says he's the one putting the world in danger and wants to protect her and the rest. Furia shows him that she's affected by the curse as well, which is proof of her dedication. At first, she only wanted to save Nemo because of his mission to protect the world, but now it's quite different. She says that despite her training to become a savior, she feels different when she's with Nemo, who shares the same sentiment. Furia says that they should head back to Grand Sea to prevent the apocalypse. Nemo holds her hand and promises to stay with her until the very end. Back at the library, Sophatia gives Gareth the power to end Nemo, while Vanis and Ellen prepare for their own mission. As Ellen activates a magic circle, she says she'll soon reach the end of the future she can see, and if she is able to have even a single moment of time after that, she will be quite happy. The ship returns to the Academy, and the three of them drop down, only to face resistance from their own friends. When talking doesn't work, Rita stays behind so Furia and Nemo can move on and save the world. As they enter the library, Rita tells Joe and the rest that she is much stronger after being freed from the person who toyed with her. She reveals that person to be Sophatia and suggests that they ask her on their own. Both Shirley and Gildan want to question Sophatia, but Joe, who had made a promise to her, begins turning into a monster. Seeing him in this state, Gildan asks the girls to meet up with Nemo while he holds Joe back. Nemo and Furia enter the library, and Unamonia tells them about the Book of Time, which is the closest point between the mortal realm and the Garden of Graciel. Unamonia then calls out Genius, who appears and reveals that the power of destruction has weakened the seal on the book. Furia figures that Genius had no contribution in the existence of the curse, and it was merely a lie to keep others away from the seal. The seal is imperfect and game ends everyone who learns the truth, which is why they couldn't let anyone close. Back when the battle with Thesis was reaching its end, Genius and Unamonia found themselves cursed by the seal. The monsters had surrounded the library, and Genius decided to sacrifice himself to hold them back. When Unamonia begged him to let her tag along, he merely asked her to send him off with that song she used to sing. As she sang the song, Genius promised to meet her again one day and headed out to face several monsters on his own. When he used Ledge's Breaker, his soul became the binding that sealed the vortex of destruction, sending him into a deep sleep. Since it was a secret between Unamonia and Genius, Furia questions how Sophatia knew about this. Before they can answer, Sophatia herself shows up and reveals that she was there to witness it herself. When they question how she managed to be at that event that happened hundreds of years ago, Sophatia reveals she was game ended by Genius that day, yet her soul clung onto several bodies throughout time until she had the perfect opportunity to erase this world. When Furia asks why she's after Nemo, Sophatia reveals that Nemo not only has the power to destroy the seal, but also to recreate it, which is why she wants him gone. As Furia rushes to attack Sophatia, Nemo is ambushed by a monstrous Gareth who severs his arms and literally sends him to the afterlife. Afterwards, Sophatia praises Gareth for the good work and knocks him out. With Nemo gone, the seal is completely destroyed, causing the seal to overflow with magic. With no one to wield Genius's power, the world is at the brink of extinction. As Furia holds a lifeless Nemo, a magic circle forms which begins healing his body. While Ellen shows up to take care of Sophatia, Nemo finds himself in a vision confronting the real Nemo, who tells him to get up and cling to life. After all, Nemo has no right to die now after taking someone else's body. Nemo hears Furia calling to him, and the real Nemo tells him that he deserves to live, despite his sins. As Nemo wakes up, His arm regenerates and he recalls the promise he made to Furia. With a resolve to protect the ones he loves, he activates Succession and gets into action. As Nemo recovers, Ellen collapses, revealing that she knew the world would end if Nemo passed away, which is why she winded the time to the spot where he was still alive. She then apologizes for hiding things from Furia and says she's happy to see a future she's never seen before. Furia thanks Ellen and joins Nemo, who promises to protect everyone even at the cost of his life. However, Sophatia absorbs the magic from the seal and turns into the female Titan, promising to complete her mission. Meanwhile, Gildan saves Joe from being consumed by possession and tells him everything about Sophatia's history. Just then, they notice a now giant Sophatia emerging from the library and causing chaos, recalling how much she endured and how the world never changes. She channels her inner Eren Yanga and starts the rumbling. Gildan and Joe rush to stop her, and as the students are making a run for it, Furia arrives to protect them from Sophatia's monsters. While Nemo dodges her from roof to roof, Genius tells him that Sophatia has merged herself with the vortex of destruction and that the Legends Breaker from a close range will seal her away. Nemo is almost blown to bits by another one of her attacks, only for Rita to deflect it and save his life. As Nemo reveals his plans, Joe and Gildan arrive to aid him in battle. Meanwhile, Shirley finds Ellen lying in the library and asks if she plans on dying here. When Ellen gives her a vague response, Shirley asks if her feelings mean nothing to Ellen. She says she can't live without her, which puts a smile on Ellen's face. Shirley then offers Ellen her vampire blood, allowing her to live on for a much longer time with her. Ellen takes the blood and says she never saw this coming. On the surface, Nemo and Furia try to get closer to Sophatia, only to be blocked by a wall of magical flame. Since Nemo is the only one who needs to get closer, Furia decides to use the remainder of her power to open a way for him. However, before she can do that, Gareth arrives and uses his new Thesis powers to tear through the wall. However, doing so causes rapid growth of the curse on his body. Nemo tells him to stop being a simp already. With Chris's help, Gareth manages to destroy the magic wall, allowing Furia and Nemo to continue with their mission. The two of them meet Sophatia on top of her giant body and ask her to stop this madness. Sophatia says people will harm each other as long as they live, and her plan to end this suffering is to destroy the very fabric of reality. This stems from the fact she once loved Genius, but things didn't work out for her due to the man's violent nature. However, the heroes give her a TED talk on a man's capability to evolve and learn from his mistakes, which makes the human race worthy of living. They claim that even the cruelest of destinies can be changed with the power of friendship, and Sophatia is disappointed to face yet another left swipe from Genius. Furia and Nemo begin attacking her, but Sophatia isn't one to give up that easily. While traversing her gigantic body, Furia accidentally falls, only for Nemo to awaken his inner Spider-Man to save her. With Furia in his arms, Nemo uses the Legends Breaker to purge Sophatia, while all of his friends watch from a distance. Eventually, they manage to overpower her. As Sophatia is reduced to a more human size, she notices how both Nemo and Furia have exhausted themselves. She uses the remainder of her power to open the vortex again, which begins swallowing the whole world. However, Nemo says he has another power within him, which was bestowed to him by Sophatia herself. As he begins turning into a Thesis monster, he apologizes to Furia for hiding his reality from her. He regrets how he couldn't become a proper monster either, and deems himself unworthy of being called a human. Yet, because of Furia's kindness, he found a purpose in life, which is to protect the ones he loves. As he transforms into a complete Thesis monster, Furia embraces him, and the two share a tender moment together. Nemo then turns his attention to Sophatia, and the two begin their brawl. As Rita watches this from afar, Sophatia tells Nemo to accept his sin, which was to take the life of a young boy and steal his memories. Hearing this, Nemo recalls how he was buried under the rubble, and despite his monstrous appearance, the real Nemo wanted to save him. Even when the boy was gravely wounded, he wished for Nemo to live on, which is why he took over his body. Nemo says he does not understand why the boy did what he did, but he has to live on to honor his sacrifice. Sophatia deems it selfish and says that sinners need to be executed, which starts another brawl between the two. Amid their battle, Nemo finds himself wounded while he restrains Sophia. Genius promises to purge her from this world, but Sophia tells Nemo that he will lose his power if he does so. When Nemo replies he never needed the power to begin with, Sophia begs him to stop because it will mean losing Genius forever. However, following his heart's desire, he manages to replace the broken seal in the vortex and returns to his human form with the power of succession, saving the world in the process. Later, as the students help repair the damages, Rita is officially admitted into the Grand Seed Academy and welcomed by Gildan. Ellen and Shirley begin their relationship, promising to be together forever. In the forest, Joe trains to become stronger, so he can protect the world in Nemo's place. Later, a recovering Gareth meets his friends and apologizes for what he almost did. They accept him wholeheartedly, which causes him to cry happy tears and receive some teasing from Joe and Gildan. Meanwhile, Nemo is wearing a backpack and is accompanied by Furia and her cat. They are headed to find a way to seal the power of darkness once and for all. Furia says she wants to be with Nemo so they can protect each other forever. The two share a sweet moment in the forest. The two then leave the academy hand in hand, so they can ensure a bright future for the world. Alright you monkeys. You finally made it to the end of the video. Congratulations! Woohoo! Well, if you enjoyed, go ahead and drop a like, subscribe to the channel so that you know when we post more, hit that bell for notifications, leave a comment about what your favorite part of this anime was, and until next time.